I think a lot of people understand what satanic panic is now because a lot of people have watched Stranger Things. And it wasn't this season, the last season, it was the season before, where you got to experience kind of what the ridicule was for people who, and that whole attitude of the ridicule for people who did things that were deemed by the churches that subscribe to the whole satanic panic idea as evil and satanic, and like that was going to cause ruin. And when you look at that, I'm going to say I was raised in the protection, the bubble culture. That and when I look back at it, a lot of times I get really frustrated because the experiences that I needed in order to be successful inside of the world were often kept from me so that I would have my soul stay clean. And it was in the whole vein, the idea of keeping your soul clean, because and I think if you look back at that whole that bubble that happened in the 80s and 90s about satanic panic, the idea was like, it was almost like doomsday prepping. They were the doomsday preppers of Christianity. And so they wanted to make sure that they kept everything clean because God was coming back soon. And the idea that God was coming back soon, that God would come back and that he would take us all, and that we wouldn't be. I remember watching Left Behind, and it wasn't the one that's got Kirk Cameron, it was like the old school one, and being terrified, and that creating a whole new scenario of fears that were inside of my head of what would happen if I got left behind without parents. It's like their bodies are just going to disappear and we're all going to float up to heaven. And it was doomsday prepping for when Jesus came back. And so you have children in this situation. What do? Well, you keep their souls clean, because what do you want above all? You want your whole family to go when the rapture happens. And it's like very, very focused on heaven. It's very heaven focused. It's not very focused on the reality of what we live in today. It's very focused on the spiritual. People taking off. And so here's the thing. That whole idea of satanic panic from the 80s. I remember I went to Christian school. I listened to Christian music. We supported, adventures, like all of the James Dobson things were done in my home. Adventures in Odyssey was what I listened to. McGee and Me was what I got in the mail every month. I got a McGee and Me tape. We watched Veggie Tales. I watched the Bible stories, the really cool ones, that look like comic books, that are they're kind of fun to watch if you still watch them. We subscribed to the Trinity Broadcasting Network. We did everything that was required of us. We went to the evangelical churches. My parents were very much into spiritual gifts and that kind of thing. And while I think that does, I believe in that because I think it's a gifting. I also believe that there were other religions that also believed in that similar idea. They just called it something different. And for me, it was always very Christian to have spiritual giftings. You wanted to speak in tongues. Like, that was like the epitome of being a good Christian, was you spoke in tongues and you got slain in the spirit. I do remember, like, at one service, and I don't know what happened. I remember at one service where we were doing praise and worship when I was like a seventh grader. I went up to the front, and that was the big thing, the front, the call. You were coming up for the call. Going up for the front for prayer. And I almost did fall over. Like, it was like there was something there that was like, whoa. And I think being an empath, of course, you pick up on all of this positive emotion. And my parents were also Jesus hippies. I mean, like, they followed all the things, and did all the things. And within that, there's a lot of control. And the control came from fear. It was like a fear of like losing your family, like leaving your family behind, because we were doomsday prepping, and we believed, like, I remember they got into all of the conspiracy theories about when God was coming back. It was always this excitement, because being in the real world was hard. And what did you do? You kept your children from being in the real world. You kept your children in a bubble. But to do that, you have to do this. Let alone not dealing with the traumas from their own childhood. And they had many. I mean, many, and reason for that, and justification for that. All the things that you go through are very valid. But what that ended up doing was, because God didn't come back in 2000 when I graduated, right? Because he didn't come back, I had to exist in the real world. And so the transition from this bubble world where I was kept like purity culture all the way, okay? You start having issues with all of that. Any intimacy, it feels wrong. And so you don't have any. And it's shameful to have a boyfriend. So we don't do that. We don't date. We don't get the information. We don't gain the experiences that your soul needs in order to function. And here's the thing, like, when I left that whole idea, it wasn't that I was rejecting it. It was that I couldn't function in a world where I had been raised in a bubble, because my bubble was no longer there to protect me, because there were other factors involved. Changes, people not being this perfect Christian human that they had been, put on the conveyor belt. They'd been like molded into this like person, and then they just keep on that same path the whole time. That didn't happen. What happened was real world stuff, suicide things, with people that I knew, depression with people that I knew, really hard situations with grandparents, really hard situations with, how to relate to the world, going to a public university after going to a Christian school my whole life. Not really my whole life. A lot of my life I was at a Christian school. After being sheltered, committing to a youth group and never leaving the youth group's like doors, I was very, very sheltered. That didn't allow for many life lessons. And so interacting with the real world was hard, and it still can be to this day. And it's not as though you mean to be this way. It's that your upbringing didn't really allow for real world experiences. It allowed for the real world experiences in emotional terms, but not in reality, because reality didn't exist. We lived in a bubble so that we could doomsday prep for when God came back. When it comes to the reality of the world, a lot of things can become kind of traumatic. I mean, it's like coming out of like being buried inside of the Fallout shelter. And when I watch Fallout, I'm gonna say I totally relate to the main character, because it's like you have this attitude that's like so happy, and so like naive, and can be taken advantage of. But I also have that whole like survival instinct. And the ability to relate to anybody, but to be like, no, we don't do that. That's not how we behave. You need to stay here so you can learn your lesson. I totally I relate to that so much. It's so funny. Because that's what it was like. That was my whole like coming out of the hole in the bubble of evangelical Christianity. and Satanic Panic and that bubble world that existed inside of the 80s and the late 70s, when you know, wanted to go to the Christian Disney World. I mean, it was a whole industry that we subscribed to. And I think that the life lessons that I have learned have kind of made me into the chick from Fallout. It's great. It's great. Because you come in and that's what it felt like. I'm just going to tell you it felt like that. It was like, what is even happening right now? Like, why are people and so you're going through all of these experiences, and thank God for me, I went through human development and family studies. That was my major, so that I could transition without like losing my sanity, because the explanations and the learning that happened in that program was amazing. Not only that, but I did the extra. I worked with the honors college and got to do research with a professor for a job, and I thought that was like really cool. And got to do my own research and got to do all kinds of academia kind of things, and I really enjoyed it. And then I met my ex there, and he was really my first relationship. Because had I had one, no. And so it was like this, you know, it was almost trauma bonding that happens, because you meet somebody and then all of this crazy happens while you're in this relationship, and you think this is totally normal, and it's not. It's abnormal, and it's very painful. And you're like, well, this must be how things are supposed to be. And it's very painful because most people have not been raised in this idealistic culture where everyone, and it's not like I was treated that way. It was like that was just the ideology. It was like I was raised to be subservient and to be quiet and to follow direction and to never question authority and to, you know, maintain my purity and to be the most holy of holies and to maintain that image of perfect Christianity so that I could doomsday prep for when Christ came back and not be unclean. And so when real world things happen, it's terrifying. And so thank God I had my major, because it was like, it helped with like, it was kind of like an intro into the world that was reality. And so I still have that outlook today, even though I've been through a whole bunch of crazy. So I do relate to the chick from Fallout. If you haven't watched it, you should watch it. That's totally who I am. Anyway, that being said, the way that I transitioned was it's a mindset. It's all here. Everything is here. We don't realize that, but our whole world can be shaped by what's up here. And our actions are shaped by what's here. So our experiences are shaped by what's up here. So your brain is a powerful instrument. And reframing the narrative on that whole situation is how you heal from it, because you have to start thinking about it as though it's this experience that happened to you for a purpose. And I think it did. Like, I honestly do. I think that gave me a lot of empathy for people. And it helped so much. It helped tremendously. And I think it gave me this moral code that I don't exist outside of, because I was raised in it. And I subscribed to it. It wasn't that I just was raised in it and I rebelled against it. I subscribed. Check. But your soul doesn't learn the lessons it needs in order to survive in the real world. So then you start being exposed to all the things in the real world and all the kinds of people in the real world. And it's shocking, because not everybody has your moral code. And it's disappointing, because not everybody has your moral code. But the way that you approach that then, because you survive, is that you start learning how to take every situation that you're in as a life lesson. Being the student always, in every situation. What can I learn from this? And how can I use it to survive? How can I adapt the information so that I can survive? Because you have to be observant in order to survive in a crazy place where everybody is like foreign to you. And this is what it feels like to come out of cults, you know? And so was I in a cult? We don't know. The jury's still out on that one. But the idea of changing how you approach life because you're constantly placed in scenarios where the morality there might be not what you expected the world to be, which is very easy because you expected the world to be way up here, and it's not. And so you face all these situations and you go through them and you learn as you go through them how to handle them. And so life is then seen as the teacher. Life is the teacher for the soul. And I believe in that and I subscribe to that. And so every experience that I have is valuable if I make it that way. Every experience that I have will teach me something about how to interact in this crazy world that I stepped into after, 2000. That's how you transition. And from that, you get through all kinds of crazy stuff. People assume you're naive because part of you is. And if you keep that, not the naivete, like the outlook on life, because it really is who I am. Like I really am focused on being kind to other people and loving other people and being good to other people and keeping this moral code. I really am that person. But I'm that person who's learned how to survive. But I've kept part of that. That outlook on life is that there is a possibility for goodness in humans. But life is your teacher. Life is the educator. Experiences are your education. And our experience is hard, yeah. I mean, if it wasn't hard or challenging, you'd be bored. It teaches you what you need to know in order to be functional and to maintain. But anyway, y'all be good. My brain's on, thinking about. I'm reframing that. I'm just telling you. That's how I reframed the whole upbringing thing. It's doomsday prepping with Christianity. What? Y'all be good. I'll talk to you later. Bye.